For many decades, not much changed in Canada's Arctic, but now climate change and Russia's invasion of Ukraine are transforming the region.
The minister has already stated that Canada won't accept a, quote, bad deal, even though concessions and border measures taken so far.
For decades, the Arctic was seen as nothing more than a frozen wilderness, a land of icebergs, polar bears, and endless nights. A place too dangerous for human settlement, too remote for trade, and too empty to matter in world politics. But today, this icy region is becoming one of the most valuable and strategic frontiers on Earth. Beneath its melting ice lies trillions of dollars worth of oil, gas, and rare minerals. Its waters are opening up new shipping routes that could change the way global trade operates forever. Nations are racing to stake their claim, building icebreakers, establishing military bases, and positioning themselves for dominance. And in the middle of this quiet but fierce competition, something surprising is happening. Canada is quietly seizing the Arctic advantage, while America, the so-called global superpower, didn't even see it coming. For most of history, the Arctic barely registered on the world's radar. The ice was too thick, the temperatures too brutal, and the dangers too severe. Explorers who dared to cross the Northwest Passage, a fabled sea route through Canada's Arctic islands, often ended in disaster, their ships crushed by ice or stranded in endless winters. But climate change has begun to rewrite that story. With global temperatures rising and Arctic ice retreating at alarming speed, areas that were once locked away for centuries are now opening up. The Arctic is transforming from a frozen desert into a new global crossroads. Scientists estimate that about 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and nearly 30% of its undiscovered natural gas lie beneath the Arctic seabed. Add to that huge deposits of rare earth minerals and the possibility of new fisheries, and suddenly, the Arctic is not a wasteland. It is a treasure chest waiting to be unlocked. But perhaps even more important than the resources are the new shipping lanes. Melting ice has opened the Northwest Passage and other routes that could cut thousands of kilometers off the journey between Asia, Europe, and North America. These routes could rival the Suez and Panama canals, saving billions in trade costs. The Arctic is no longer the edge of the world. It is becoming the center of a new geopolitical struggle. What makes Canada so important in this story is geography. Canada owns one of the largest portions of Arctic territory in the world. In fact, around 40% of the Arctic coastline belongs to Canada, stretching across a massive archipelago of islands and waterways. At the heart of this region lies the Northwest Passage, the very route that explorers once dreamed of but never conquered. Today, as the ice melts, the Northwest Passage is becoming navigable, and Canada is claiming it as part of its internal waters. This is not a small legal detail. It is a potential game changer. If Canada's claim is recognized internationally, then every ship passing through the Northwest Passage will have to follow Canadian rules. Canada could charge tolls, enforce environmental regulations, and dictate who gets access and who does not. Imagine a world where Canada becomes the gatekeeper of one of the most important trade routes of the 21st century. This would not only give Canada a powerful economic advantage, but also a significant boost in international influence. For a country often seen as the polite, quieter neighbor to the United States, this is a chance to finally step into the spotlight on the global stage. Now here's the surprising part. The United States also has Arctic territory through Alaska, which gives it a direct claim to the region. Yet, despite being the world's leading superpower, America has been slow to act in the Arctic. While Canada has been preparing for years, investing in Arctic patrol ships, expanding its icebreaker fleet, and strengthening its sovereignty claims, the U.S. has been distracted by other global conflicts and domestic issues. The U.S. Coast Guard currently operates only 2 functioning icebreakers, and one of them is decades old and constantly in need of repair. Compare that to Russia, which has more than 40 icebreakers, including nuclear-powered ones that can smash through the thickest Arctic ice. Even China, a country with no Arctic territory at all, has built modern icebreakers and declared itself a near-Arctic state. Meanwhile, America has neglected the region. This lack of urgency means that while Washington focuses on Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, it is quietly losing ground in its own northern backyard. The irony is hard to miss. The global superpower is being outpaced in the Arctic by its own neighbor, Canada. To truly understand the importance of Canada's advantage, we have to look at the broader chessboard. The Arctic is not just a competition between Canada and the United States, it is a global race. Russia has gone all in, reopening Soviet-era military bases across the Arctic, deploying advanced radar systems, and building a fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers that no other country can match. Moscow sees the Arctic as a core part of its national strategy, both for resources and for military defense. China, despite being thousands of miles away, has invested billions into Arctic research, shipping, and partnerships with Russia. Beijing knows that if it can secure influence in the Arctic, it will secure its role in the future of global trade. Even smaller countries like Norway and Denmark are making bold moves, submitting claims to extend their continental shelves deep into the Arctic Ocean. And then there is Canada, quietly but firmly asserting its sovereignty. Ottawa has submitted extensive scientific evidence to the United Nations, arguing that its continental shelf stretches far into the Arctic. Canada is also strengthening the Canadian Rangers, a unique force made up mostly of Indigenous people who live in the north and know the land better than anyone. These Rangers are not just soldiers, they are symbols of Canada's deep connection to its Arctic identity. All of these moves show that Canada is not waiting for permission. It is already acting like an Arctic power. For the United States, the stakes could not be higher. If Washington continues to ignore the Arctic, it risks losing influence in one of the most strategic regions of the century. Imagine American companies having to follow Canadian regulations just to ship goods across the Arctic. Imagine Canada and Russia setting the rules for Arctic trade, while the US has no choice but to adapt. This is not just about economics, it is also about security. The Arctic is becoming a military frontier, with submarines, radar stations, and missile systems playing a key role. Losing ground here would weaken America's northern defense and give rivals an advantage. The Arctic is no longer an afterthought, it is a battlefield of the future. Looking ahead, the Arctic could play out in several ways. One possibility is that Canada cements its role as the Arctic's gatekeeper, turning the Northwest Passage into its own version of the Suez Canal. This would bring Canada wealth, influence, and global recognition. Another possibility is that the US finally wakes up, invests heavily in icebreakers and military bases, and challenges Canada's claims, creating tension between the two allies. Or perhaps the Arctic becomes a zone of major power rivalry, with Russia and China expanding so aggressively that Canada and the US are forced to cooperate more closely. Whatever happens, one thing is certain: the Arctic will not remain a quiet backwater. It is becoming the front line of global competition. And that brings us to the end of today's story. The Arctic, a place once ignored, is now becoming the stage for one of the most important geopolitical battles of our time. Canada is stepping forward, America is struggling to catch up, and the rest of the world is watching closely. The question is not just about maps or borders. It's about the future of power, trade, and survival in a world that is changing faster than ever. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Canada will rise as the unexpected gatekeeper of the Arctic? Or will the United States wake up in time and reassert its dominance? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends who love global news and hidden stories, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss another breakdown of the world's most important events. Thank you for watching, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.